Donald Trump faces a situation in 2026 that no leader in American political history has ever confronted, simultaneously defending himself in four separate criminal trials across different jurisdictions. And not just any trials, these are happening during the most critical months of the 2026 midterm elections. Elections that will determine control of Congress. Elections that will shape the future of the Senate. And elections that will potentially test whether Trump's 2028 presidential candidacy can even survive. As someone who has observed American politics for decades, I can tell you this situation is unprecedented. Once upon a time, political parties could distance themselves from problematic candidates. They could ignore them. They could even withdraw support if necessary. But Donald Trump's control over the Republican Party runs so deep that the party has now chained itself to his legal fate. When he wins, they win. When he loses, the entire party sinks with him. In February 2026, leaked documents from a coordination meeting held by Trump's lawyers as they tried to reach judges in four states simultaneously revealed just how chaotic the situation had become. One memo read, "The client cannot physically be in four places at once. Georgia trial Tuesday, New York Wednesday and Thursday, Florida Friday. Federal case starts next week." This is logistically impossible. But logistics are the least of the problems. The real problem is political. While Trump sits in courtrooms, Republican candidates are paralyzed over whether to defend him, whether to appear with him, whether to show loyalty to him, and every decision has serious consequences. Let me explain exactly how we got to this point, and why the 8 months between March and November 2026 could be the most critical period for American democracy. As of March 2026, Donald Trump is a defendant in four separate criminal cases, each in a different jurisdiction, each with different charges, and most importantly, each requiring simultaneous court appearances. Georgia, election interference. Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis's case began in March. Trump and 18 other defendants are charged with a criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election results. That famous recorded phone call, where Trump asked Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to just find 11,780 votes, is played repeatedly in court. But what makes this case truly devastating are the defense Trump can no longer use. Presidential immunity? The Supreme Court rejected it. Executive privilege? Doesn't apply to state elections over federal authority. Free political speech? Doesn't cover inciting illegal actions. According to the Washington Post's March reporting, jury selection took 2 weeks because finding 12 people in Fulton County without prejudice about Trump was nearly impossible. But a jury was eventually seated, and trials began. New York, financial fraud. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's case is even more complex. Trump is charged with representing property values differently to banks, insurance companies, and tax authorities. There are hundreds of millions of dollars in discrepancies on Mar-a-Lago's value alone. Judge Arthur Engoron had previously found Trump guilty of civil fraud and hit him with a $450 million fine. Now the criminal case proceeds, and a criminal conviction could result in prison time. Trials run 3 days a week. Trump is required to be physically present, and every day, former accountants, bank officials, real estate appraisers testify, documenting how Trump's valuations had no relationship to reality. Florida, classified documents. The classified documents case held at Mar-a-Lago is perhaps the most dangerous. Trump is charged with willfully retaining national security documents, attempting to prevent the government from retrieving them, and even lying to his own lawyers about what he was hiding. Judge Aileen Cannon, despite being appointed by Trump, could no longer delay the case after the Supreme Court ruling. Trials began in April, and the testimony is devastating. Former Trump employees describe being told to hide boxes from investigators. Security camera footage showed documents being moved just before the FBI search. And worst of all, there are audio recordings of Trump showing classified military plans to people without security clearances. Federal case, January 6th, and then there's Special Counsel Jack Smith's January 6th case. This is perhaps the most constitutionally significant. Trump is charged with attempting to force Vice President Mike Pence to violate his constitutional duty, organizing fake elector slates, and attempting to obstruct Congress's election certification process. This case began in May, and every day new details about January 6th emerge. White House insiders testify that Trump refused to act for hours to stop the violence. Text message records show him instructing supporters to march to the Capitol. Video evidence recreates that day's chaos. Now let's understand how impossible the situation is. Trump cannot be in 4 places at once. But judges in all 4 cases are demanding his physical presence. According to Politico's April reporting, Trump's legal team desperately tried to create a calendar. Monday, Georgia trial. Tuesday, flight to New York, evening trial preparation. Wednesday through Thursday, New York trials. Friday, flight to Florida, trial. Next week, federal case in Washington, D.C. That's just 1 week. And this will continue for 8 months, until the November midterms. But logistics are only the beginning. Trump also needs to campaign for the 2026 midterms. Republican candidates want his support. Some of them. Others want to stay away from him. And Trump himself knows the party's future depends on these elections. But how can he campaign when he's sitting in courtrooms 4 days a week? The answer, he can't. And this is turning into a complete disaster for the Republican Party. As the 2026 midterms approach, the Republican Party is experiencing the deepest division in its history. And the breaking point is a simple question. Support Trump or distance from him? The MAGA wing. One wing of the party maintains absolute loyalty to Trump. Names like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan attend every trial and stand by him. They say all the cases are political witch hunts. They attack the media, judges, prosecutors. This wing believes that even convictions won't stop Trump. On the contrary, they think it will make him stronger, mobilize his base even more. The traditional wing. But the other wing of the party is quietly panicking. Former governors, senators, House leaders, conservative but institutional Republicans. These people know Trump's courtroom dramas are damaging the party. Polls in swing states are terrible. Independent voters see images of Trump in court and turn their backs on Republican candidates. Suburban women voters, the group Republicans absolutely need to win 2026, have largely moved away. The candidate crisis. And then there's the individual candidate's dilemma. According to the Hill's May poll, candidates in safe Republican districts embrace Trump because they can't win their primaries without him. Candidates in swing districts flee from Trump because they can't win the general election with him. But fleeing from Trump angers the MAGA base and pushes them to stay home and not vote. This is an unsolvable equation, and Republican Party strategists are tearing their hair out. In a June CNN interview, an unnamed Republican senator said, "Trump is our albatross. We can't throw him off because he is our base. But we can't carry him because he's sinking us. We're stuck in a war we cannot win." In July, things really started getting worse. Trump's performance in the 4 cases, or more accurately, his lack of performance, was a complete disaster. Explosion in Georgia. In the 3rd week of July, Trump had an angry outburst in the Georgia courtroom. When the judge reprimanded him for making improper comments in front of the jury, Trump jumped up and yelled at the judge. Security personnel had to intervene. After this incident, the judge fined Trump $10,000 and warned that if it happened again, he would be removed from the courtroom. The footage went viral, and Republican candidates were panicking. Testimony disaster in New York. In August, Trump decided to testify in the New York case against his lawyer's advice, and it was a complete disaster. In cross-examination, prosecutor Joshua Steinglass cornered Trump. He asked questions about valuation inconsistencies. Trump defended himself, got angry, didn't answer questions properly. At one point, the judge had to tell Trump to answer the questions. At another point, Trump called the prosecutor a third-rate hack, and the judge warned him about contempt. Legal analysts agreed that Trump had damaged his own case, and the jury saw all of it. Evidence mountain in Florida. In Florida, the evidence was so overwhelming that Trump's lawyers couldn't even present any effective defense. Photographs of classified documents seized by the FBI from Mar-a-Lago were shown to the jury. Documents were seen on bathroom floors, in storage rooms, on Trump's desk. Former employees testified that Trump explicitly told them to hide documents. One employee recalled Trump saying, "They'll never find these." And worst of all, an audio recording was played of Trump showing military attack plans to people without security clearances. On the recording, Trump said, "As president, I could have declassified this, but now I can't. Isn't that incredible?" The judge turned to the defense attorney and asked, "Do you have a defense against this statement?" After a long silence, the lawyer said, "No, Your Honor." By September, just 2 months before the midterms, Trump's situation had collapsed. First conviction, New York. On September 9th, the New York jury delivered its verdict. Guilty on 34 separate counts: financial fraud, tax evasion, falsifying records, guilty on every one. Judge Engoron postponed sentencing for 12 weeks, right after the election. But Trump was now a convicted felon. The reaction was immediate. Democrats declared victory. The MAGA base screamed about a rigged system. But most importantly, Republican candidates were silent, because they didn't know what to say. Second blow in Georgia. A week later, the Georgia jury also delivered its verdict. Guilty of election interference. Guilty of the fake elector scheme. Guilty of illegally pressuring a state official. Trump was now a convicted felon in 2 states, and the Florida and federal cases were still ongoing. Rebellion within the party. In the 3rd week of September, an unnamed group of Republican senators and representatives spoke to Politico. Their message was clear: Trump should withdraw from candidacy. "We cannot run for president with convictions in 3 states, said one senator. "It's mathematically impossible. And as long as he insists, he's dragging down the entire party." But Trump refused to withdraw. On Truth Social, he wrote, "I will never, ever back down. I will not let this witch hunt stop me. I will run again in 2028, and I will win." November 5th, 2026 midterm elections were a complete disaster for the Republican Party. Democrats gained 28 seats in the House. They took back control of the Senate. They flipped 6 states in governor races. In swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, Republican candidates lost by large margins. Exit polls showed the reason. 62% of voters said Trump's court cases influenced their voting decision, and 73% of those voted against Republicans because of Trump's convictions. This wasn't just an election loss, this was a total annihilation operation. By the end of November, Trump was also found guilty in the Florida and federal cases. 4 cases, 4 convictions, sentencing scheduled for December. But the real damage was done to the Republican Party. The party was now debating whether a post-Trump future was even possible. Or had it permanently become the MAGA movement that Trump created? Young Republicans, names like Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, all tried to distance themselves, but the MAGA base called them traitors. Older conservatives, names like Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, were saying, "We told you so." But they had almost no power left within the party. 2026 was a test year for American democracy, and the results are complex. On one hand, the system worked. Courts held Trump accountable. Juries looked at evidence and delivered guilty verdicts. Judges applied the law. No one, not even former presidents, was above the law. On the other hand, the system was damaged. Millions of Americans did not view the convictions as legitimate. The MAGA base believed the entire judicial system was corrupted, and America's political division became deeper than ever. As a conservative, I believe institutions matter. I know that limited government is important, that no one is above the law, and that democracy requires strong and impartial institutions. 2026 tested these principles, and the answer is still not clear. Trump was convicted, but half the country views the convictions as political. The system enforced accountability, but many Americans no longer trust the system. The question ahead is, what happens now? Can Trump run again in 2028 with convictions? Can the Republican Party move forward from him? Can America heal this deep division? I don't know the answers, but I know one thing for certain. 2026 will be remembered as an unforgettable year in American history, as a stress test for democracy, as a measure of accountability, and as a test of whether anyone, no matter how powerful, is truly above the law. The stakes have never been higher. The consequences have never been more uncertain, and the future of American democracy has never been more precarious.